Welcome back. Today, the Biden administration is continuing what it calls its crackdown on airline junk fees, and this time there's a focus on families. A new proposed rule would ban airlines from charging families fees to sit together on a flight. The rule would also mandate refunds or free rebooking if family seating is not available. Only on CBS Mornings, U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg joins us now. Of course, the secretary is also considered a possible vice presidential contender for the Harris campaign. We'll get to that in a moment. Good morning, Mr. Secretary. First, how big a problem is this, and what pushback do you expect from the airlines? Because an earlier proposed rule has already been snarled in federal courts.
Well, this is something we think is very important. I feel that way even more strongly now that I've had the experience of flying with toddlers. My husband and I have flown often with our kids who are about to turn 3. That is a complicated process already, that much more so if you wind up in this situation where you can't get seated next to your kids. We've gotten hundreds of complaints over this issue since I got this job, and we're doing something about it. What we're doing is we are requiring that an airline not charge you extra to sit next to your kids or your grandkids. It applies to any accompanying adults. We think that's common sense. Now, you're right that the airlines might push back. It wouldn't be the first time that their lobbyists push back on things that we consider to be common sense. But I want to emphasize that this is clearly doable. We've already, just since we started making public that we want airlines to do this, we've been able to sign up 4 airlines. You can go to flightrights.gov for more information that already are doing it. American Airlines is doing it. Alaska is doing it. Frontier, JetBlue. So it's clearly something that can be done. But we are here with this rule that would say it must be done, and airlines would be required to comply.
And how would families try to see that this rule is actually working for them? What do they do at the gate?
Well, the idea is that this would be taken care of long before you get to the gate. Because what happens right now is sometimes families might be in that position where you're either told you got to pay extra to get those seats where you're all together, or you wind up having to haggle or bargain with somebody who's in a seat, or the flight attendant winds up being in the awkward position of trying to sort that out. This way, within 48 hours of booking, the airline would be required to assign you those seats together. And if they can't come up with that, if it's not available, then they have to offer you the option of getting your money back or being put onto a different flight without having to pay a fare difference where there are those seats together. And again, to me, this goes back to just a very common sense idea that when you're flying with small kids, you ought to be confident you're going to be able to sit next to them.
Mr. Secretary, families of the victims of the Boeing 737 MAX crashes are urging the federal court to reject a plea agreement that the DOJ filed, saying it's too lenient. Some believe that it lets Boeing avoid accountability for those crashes that killed 346 people. What is your response to that?
Well, there are limits to how much I can weigh in on the court process, but what I will say is I have met with those families. Their stories are heartbreaking, and it's one of the reasons why we've been coming down so hard on Boeing in terms of what happens next. When there was that plug door that came out of an airplane, Alaska Airlines airplane earlier this year, that led to a process where FAA put Boeing under a microscope. It's led to a number of changes, and we are going to hold Boeing accountable so that their quality is 1,000% something that every American can be confident in.
Mr. Secretary, we know you're at the Milwaukee airport. That's why we can hear the overhead announcements. Very quickly, do you want to be Kamala Harris's running mate? And whatever your answer is on that, what would you tell the American public about what you've observed as a cabinet secretary of the vice president?
Yeah, I can't speak about the campaign side, but I can definitely tell you that I have been proud to serve in an administration where she is an extraordinary leader. I have seen her in the Oval Office. I have seen her with world leaders. I have seen her in the Roosevelt Room, not just advising the president, but bringing people together, asking questions, and bringing together ideas that get to the core of an issue. And I think you're seeing that displayed every day in this administration. Today's news is just part of that, an administration that has this commitment on making sure everyday life is better and more affordable, including going after junk fees, part of which is what we're doing with airlines on everything from refunds to today's announcement. She is one of the architects of this administration's pro-consumer and pro-family policy.
If she asked you to be her running mate, would you say yes?
Again, I just can't get into the campaign side while I'm appearing as secretary. What I will say is I think so highly of her as a leader, and I'm really proud to serve with her in this administration.
Mr. Secretary, you might not be able to give us an answer, but I think your smile says it all. But I want to talk to you about former President Trump. You know, he's on the campaign trail, and he has made a series of inflammatory comments, including falsely questioning Kamala Harris's racial identity. What do you make of the statements coming from former President Trump and J.D. Vance?
Well, just really uncalled for, disturbing. Again, I've got to be careful to comply with campaign rules that I can't weigh in on the campaign while I'm sitting in this capacity. But what I think I would point to is just a difference in focus from one administration's policies to another administration's policies. You know, we've come in doing things that other administrations have talked about. But we're doing the work in this administration, whether it's the infrastructure work that has me in Wisconsin. We've been looking at port improvements and passenger railroad opportunities here, something that, administration after administration said they were going to do, never happened.
Yeah.
Then Joe Biden, Kamala Harris came in, and now it's happening. But same thing in terms of just taking care of people. And I think, anyone in a government role like this should get up in the morning really just thinking about one question, which is how can I use the powers, the tools, the budget, the authorities of this office to make life a little easier, to make it a little more affordable, to make things a little bit better for people going about their day.
Mr. Secretary, we would love to chat with you all morning, but we know you have a flight to catch, so we're going to let you go. Thanks for taking time with us here this morning.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Appreciate it.